And you might want to take out that little sheet with all the common powers on it as well, because we're still going to be using that sheet. So page 6, halfway down, it says that we're going to try and solve equations using nth roots, which pretty much we're going to do the same thing to solve these equations as if it were x squared, but instead we have x to the 6th and x to the 5th for the first two. So if you're trying to solve an equation for a variable, what do you have to do first? For any equation with a variable. H?
You have to get x to the variable by itself.
Yeah, you got to get the variable by itself. So you can't take a square root or a cube root or a sixth root unless the x is by itself. So in this case, Paige, to get x by itself, we would?
Divide 1,458 by 2.
Yeah, so we need to divide that 1458 by 2 to get x by itself. So we still have the x to the 6th. The power isn't going away, but at least that variable now is by itself. And Paige, 1458 divided by 2 is? 729. So we need to isolate the variable. And then I still have x to the 6th, so how do we get rid of that exponent, Sarah?
Would you do the 6th root of 7?
Yeah. So when we were dealing with x squared, we took the square root. So if the power is a 6, then we take the 6th root. So whatever the power is, if you want to get rid of it, you have to take the root of that, because that's really doing the opposite to get rid of that power. So on your chart, you're looking at the powers of 6. What's the 6th root of 729? 3. Is there anything else we have to think about? Virginia. Why?
Because it's an even power, so it can be negative or positive to multiply against.
Right. So don't forget when you're taking an even root, any even root gets a plus or a minus in the answer. So the answer really there are two of them because I can multiply positive 3 together 6 times or negative 3 together 6 times and I still get that value 729. So plus or minus in the answer. An even root has 2 values. Sam, question?
Where do we look on the chart for this?
So you're going to the column that has all the 6s, the powers of 6.
Okay.
And then underneath that powers of 6, you're going to where the number is 729.
Okay.
And then go to the left of it, and the left should be that 3.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you try solving the next one, letter B?
Well,
I
Right here, 729.
Yeah.
So 6 to 3 to the 6th is 729. That means that 6 to the 729.
You should put parentheses, find 729.
No, well, because of the 6 tells you that you should have had this covered.
Okay.
So if it was like over here, it's a 5, so you're going to go bigger for that. So Kate, if we divide by 4, 128 divided by 4 is? 32. And Kate, this time we're taking the 5th root, and the 5th root of 32 is? 2. Do we need a plus or minus for this one? No, because? Right, so 5 is odd. So because our nth root is an odd value, whatever the number is underneath should be the same sign as your answer. So we have a positive number underneath, my answer should be positive as well. Any questions on those first two? So the second two problems are only different a little bit here because it's in parentheses. So if I have x plus 4 cubed, do you think we need to like write that out 3 times and FOIL it and then try and get it equal to 0 and factor? Sarah?
Just distribute
Not even distribute the cube. We want to get rid of that cube. Cube rooted, right. So you don't want to make the problem bigger. You don't want to make the numbers bigger. Our goal is to try and get rid of the thing that's cubed. So right now that x plus 4 is in a parenthesis or quantity together. And if we want to get rid of that quantity that's cubed, we're going to take the cube root of it. So anything that's cubed, I don't want to cube things and make them larger. We want to get rid of the cube by doing the cube root. So we can take the cube root of x plus 4, and we can take the cube root of 12. So by taking the cube root, that cancels the cube and the root. So the only thing that's left is x plus 4. I no longer even have x cubed because we got rid of both of those by taking the cube root. On the other side, so this is where you're using your chart. You're going to go in the power of 3 column. Is there a cube root of 12? No. So then you're going to leave it as the cube root of 12. I don't want you to get a decimal. I want you to keep it exact, just like when we were dealing with square roots. If there wasn't a square root, like the square root of 5, we kept it as the square root of 5. Does this get a plus or minus in front of it? No, because 3 is odd, so it's just the cube root of 12. So how do we finish solving for x? Sam?
Subtract 4 from both sides.
Yeah, so we'll subtract 4 from both sides. So when you write this, you need to write the integer first. It really is like the more important numbers if you were ordering numbers as importance. So the integer gets written first. This is a positive number because there's not a symbol or sign in front of it. And then the radical is the cube root of 12, so that gets second. So that's standard form when you're writing numbers. There is a way to write numbers. So an integer and then a radical should be after that, or any other number besides that. If it had an I, it would go after that. So x equals negative 4 plus the cube root of 12. Questions?
Could you simplify that?
Nope. Does anybody know why it can't be simplified?
It's cube root.
Because this is a cube root and that's just a negative 4. So like that's all you can do with the problem. You can't combine them together, they just stay separate like that. Questions? So Ethan, if the other one says x minus 3 to the 4th is equal to 21, how would you do, what would you do to get this?
You have to, not square root, you have to, like the 4 root,
So the 4th root.
4th.
So that cancels out our exponent and the 4. Ethan, is there a 4th root of 21?
No.
No. So the 4th root of 21 is just stays as the 4th root of 21. Does that get a plus or minus in front of it?
Yes.
Yes, because 4 is even. So that's my plus or minus. The 4th root is an even root. So when you add the 3 to the other side, we have 3 and then plus or minus the 4th root of 21. Any questions with solving the equations? So if you flip it over to the other side, there's 2 little word problems. So that we can use some exponents into the word problem. These, because it is a word problem, you will be using a calculator to get a more exact answer, one that kind of makes a little more sense to go along with the problem. This one here is an animal population. So the animal population P of a certain animal species after T months can be modeled by P equals, so P is the population, C, which is the initial population what it started with, and then 1.21 to the T over 3 power. So eventually we'll learn how to get this number here once we start talking about chapter 7, but not right now, but we will be coming up with the numbers for the equation at some point throughout the year. Find the population after 19 months if the initial population was 75. So David, what numbers could we plug in and where?
For the T, you plug in 19.
So 19 months is our time. What else gets plugged in, David?
I, you
Right, 75 is our C. So this is purely a calculator problem. Like last night, there was a group of problems where you were just using the calculator for. When you put this in the calculator, you need to make sure that you're using parentheses around the 121. So as it's written up here, you need to use the parentheses as well. And then the caret button and 19 divided by 3, you may want to put that in parentheses depending on how old your calculator is. So generally, when you put the caret button in the calculator, it bumps you up to the top. But sometimes the caret button does not do that if your calculator is a little older. So you might need to put the parentheses around the 1930s. And again, it just depends on what your calculator is, how old it is, and the capabilities that it has. So, what did you get? Yeah. So 250, what was it, 0.82? 0.82. So obviously we can't have 0.82 of an animal or a species, but if we were solving for something else, it would be 0.82. And you can't round up because it doesn't make another whole animal. So we would have about 250 animals of this certain species after 19 months. Anybody not get that? Make sure you plug it in your calculator correctly. So then the last problem here is talking about the volume of a cone, which is given by pi r squared h over 3. Height is the h of the cone, r is the radius. So it says find the radius of the cone if the volume is 25 cubic inches and the height is 6 inches. So Izza, how would we approach this problem? What would we do here?
Okay, so basically the volume of cone is given by V equals pi r squared height over 3.
Good.
And h is the height of the cone, so the height is 6 inches, so we're just going to plug that in.
Okay.
And
Anything else?
well, r is the radius.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and volume, 25
There we
equals,
go.
yeah.
Volume is 25 cubic inches. Now remember, the volume doesn't get cubed. It's the units that are cubed. So don't cube that 25. It's just 25 cubic inches. So the units are cubed, but that number stays as 25. All right, so now we have to try and solve for r. We have to get the r squared by itself. What's one thing that we could do with the problem, Virginia? So we could multiply by 3, because right now it's being divided by 3. What else could we do to try and solve the problem?
Could you simplify it because it's 6?
We could also simplify it because of these two numbers right here. So Virginia, you are not wrong. Sarah's also not wrong. Neither one of you are more correct than the other as well. It just depends on what you see with the problem. So you can multiply by 3. It's going to give you a bigger number, but you'd still end up dividing and getting the same number. Or if you notice the 6 and 3 over here, they could also reduce to 2. So it kind of depends what you see first with the problem, but both of those will be correct mathematical steps to take. So we could take 6 divided by 3 and get 2. So now we have 2 pi r squared is equal to 25. Maddie, what else would we do to try and get
What I did, I multiplied, I would multiply the 2 by pi, and it's 6.28, and then divide the 25 by the 6.28.
Right, so she said this is 6.28. And then divide by that 6.28. So Maddie, 25 divided by 6.28 is
3.98.
perfect. And then the last step, Maddie, to get r by itself?
Square it.
Perfect. So r is?
1.99.
Yeah. So about 1.99, and this is in inches. It's almost 2 inches. Does this get a plus or minus with it? We took a square root. No, because it's inches. I can't have a negative amount of feet or inches. I can't have a negative space for anything. So about 1.99 inches for the radius.
So when you wrote the stuff that's in green,
Yes, right here.
I divided by 2 first, and then my end got 1.97. Would you consider that wrong, or would?
No, that's fine. Yeah. No. And this should be an 8, not a 5. Other questions? So I have a worksheet for you, and you've got some time. It looks like about 8 minutes to start it.